You confused me there, Ben. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Shoop and Aye-Aye-Ajay show. It's AJ Sapolsky. I'm here with Ben Shoop, and today we're joined by Greg Thompson from Cover One. I'm starting an internship there in a couple days. I'm very excited for it. Greg, how you doing today?
Doing great. Looking forward to getting to work with you more often and heading down to check out the Senior Bowl, all kinds of good stuff. But the Bills are still alive, so it's a good time to be a Bills fan.
Ben, how you doing?
Good. I mean, can't complain after a win, no matter how good or bad it is. You know, a win's a win in this league. So, I mean, on to the next one, right? We got three more that we got to push through, but we gotta start this weekend in a tough matchup again. So I'm excited to talk some football, excited to watch some football, and get the season going, hopefully.
Yeah, so first off, I want to dive into the Josh Allen performance on Sunday. It was a little shaky. I think overall he played a pretty good game for the Bills. But Greg, just your thoughts on his overall play that game. Obviously, it wasn't what we saw last year from Josh and against New England, but just your overall thoughts on Allen's performance and how the offense in total looked.
So, I think one, it speaks to how far we've come as a franchise, as a fan base, where our expectations are, that the general consensus is a quarterback that put up 34 points with 352 yards passing, 9 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, plus another 20 yards rushing. And the general consensus is, man, what's wrong with Josh Allen? He can't keep doing this. We're not going to be like, it's just really crazy to think about where our expectations and where the bar has gotten to, that a sloppy 34 points and 350 passing yards and 3 touchdowns is now like a cause for concern. So obviously I say that somewhat tongue in cheek because I was critical of him in our post game show. The 7 sacks, plenty of those were on him. I thought that he wasn't maybe fully prepared for how Miami was going to spy him. He stepped up in the pocket thinking he was going to be able to escape, and then kind of would hitch and stop and got caught on a couple of those for some sacks. There were a few that were just clean rushes that, obviously Miami was sending the house over and over and over again. We were kind of saying, okay, if you're going to keep going cover zero, we're going to take the single high deep shots and trust our guys. Plenty of those connected for some really nice deep shots, a couple that barely got overturned and all the things that go with that. But ultimately, whether they were fluky tip interceptions or, hey, maybe John Brown ran the wrong route at the end of it, or, some of the things that go with the fumble luck, it was still the only reason Miami had a chance to be in that game is because we turned the ball over 4 times and gave them those opportunities to be able to do that. So, I don't think it's quite as sky is falling as some people seem to be treating it. Like he still played a pretty ridiculous game, but if someone wants to take the mindset that, hey, we can't play that sloppy of a game against Cincinnati and Kansas City and expect to beat them, they're probably right there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of one of those weird games though too to watch, because like you look at the score sheet and you look at the stats from the game, you would think that it would be more of a blowout, kind of like week 3 when we were in Miami. You'd think we would win that game easily. So it's another one of those games where it's just, maybe we look better on paper than it did on the field. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to the turnovers, I've always been saying it. Allen is more of a Favre than it is Manning or than he is Rodgers or than anything else. He is going to give you those plays that make you go, wow, like just you can't believe what you just watched. And then there's also plays that, because he wants to win so bad that you'll look at and say, okay, maybe you were forcing it a little bit, maybe you got a little careless. But that's the way he plays. And yeah, I think as he gets older, he'll calm it down a little bit with those plays. But that's what makes him part of what makes him him. I mean, that's part of why we love him. So, I mean, and people love to watch him, even not all around the league. People love to watch Allen play. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we're gonna have to live with. It's something that, yeah, you hopefully doesn't happen every week, at least that many times with those little mistakes. But you're going to get a few at least every week. Maybe you'll get lucky. Sometimes they'll be dropped. Sometimes he'll just get away with a really bad throw, a bad scramble, whatever it is. But I mean, I still don't think he played a bad game. I still think he played a pretty good game. I think, obviously he had that drop by Shakir that kind of hurt him.
Well,
Knocked.
I mean, that point, if that's such a crazy inflection point there, a minute 54 left in the first half, first down at the Miami 16, up 17-6. So you're talking about at that point, the probability would tell you we're very likely to go up 24-6 at that point. At a minimum, it's about to be 20-6, probably ending the half, going into the second half up 24-6, 20-6. Somehow, from that moment of overturning that, the Dolphins get 2 more possessions, and we go in 17-17. Then we end up kicking field goal, whatever, 20-17. But still, just a crazy inflection point of that, him barely not cradling it as he rolled it.
Yeah, and if Shakir comes down with that and Dawson Knox comes down with it in the end zone, Allen's got 400 plus and 4 touchdowns, and we're not really talking about, oh, he had a bad game, he had this. So it's just those little plays, and I always say I think you can leave it to Buffalo to just continue to beat themselves when it seems like we should have the game in hand. Like you said, like we should have been up 20-6 or even 23-6, 24-6. So it's just the little things, and I mean it's part of football too that you start to see each game. You see it every game. I mean, last night, I think everybody saw it. It was 4 missed extra points. So like it's just the little things that happens with every team. So I'm not worried about the offense. We still put up 34 points, like you said. So I mean, I think we'll be fine. I do though want to see Shakir a little more involved. That's the one thing I've been saying for a while. He does look good. Obviously he had that one drop, but he still looked good otherwise to me. So what do you think, AJ?
Yeah, I just want to go back to what Greg said before I bring up another point. The sacks that Allen has took last game were very interesting to me because the O-line, you can tell Allen doesn't trust as much this year. It's just so apparent, like being at the games and watching all the snaps, the way he plays behind that O-line is just so much different than the last couple of years. And there were a few times where the pocket wasn't really, like pressing him or getting to him and closing out on him that quick, but he would try and step up and run. And that interior O-line, the D tackles were just so, overpowering our O-line in the interior that it led to like a negative 2-yard sack. Now, Allen, there was another time where Allen lost a fumble, and we recovered it. And there was also a time where Hines fumbled, and they also recovered it. So we actually put, the ball, on the turf 6 times. Yeah. So there were 6 possibilities for a turnover in that game. So that just can't happen against good team. The Bills can't be doing that. They're too good offensively and too good of a team to let that bring them down. So it's just little things like that. Allen trusting his own line more. And the next point I want to bring up, Greg and Ben, I'll ask you both, was a situation in the fourth quarter with like about 9 minutes, a little over 9 minutes, and the Bills just got the ball back. I think they were up a touchdown or 10 at that point. And the first 2 play calls were, down the left side of the field to Gabe Davis. Overthrown, back-to-back plays, and then you take another shot, I think on third down or something incomplete. We ended up only taking like 25 seconds off the clock, and then there was another situation when it was like 3rd and 1, and it ended up working out, but it was like a 30-yard pass to Shakir. Shakir like jumped up, caught the ball. So there was 2 like instances where the play calling from Dorsey was a little interesting to me. I think taking shots like that down the field in that situation, even a handoff to Cook or Singletary in that situation, just to take some time off the clock. I think the Bills are confident in the aspect that they know they're going against Skylar Thompson. McDermott knows what he has with his defense. So maybe that had something to do with it, trying to just end the game and taking that big shot. And there was times Gabe Davis was open that Allen didn't see him and took the underneath route. So just Greg, you can go first. Your thoughts on Dorsey and how he's handled playing with leads this year, and is that concerning to you at all?
So I'm torn because it's hard to know how much of that is Dorsey and how much of that is Josh. Mm-hmm. All of us, no one wants to criticize Josh. Like, he's the greatest thing that's ever happened to this franchise. He's everybody's favorite player. He's the reason that we're in this. He's the reason we have a chance to win. He's the best thing that's ever happened to this franchise. He's also not perfect. And there were times that there were guys open underneath and he chooses to go deep. That's not Dorsey. Like, that's not Dorsey calling. None of those are like single read, one route plays where Dorsey says, "Hey, this is the chuck it up the sideline to Gabe Davis play."
Yeah.
Now, some of those there's some instances where he could know Josh better and not put the temptation in front of him and maybe call more of a layered flood concept where, you know, you're moving the pocket and you know that they're bringing cover zero blitz. So, hey, just, you know, shift all the line to the right, roll Josh to the right, run a flood concept to the right, give him some layered options. And none of those are a clear out, you know, go route. Sure. You know, maybe there's some things he could do better to know Josh well enough that in that instance, let's remove the play call for a second. In that instance, cover zero blitz, press man coverage versus Gabe Davis, the right read is the go ball. Like that is the right read. Like that's not Josh playing hero ball. Like if you ask, and you have Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, like you put any other cerebral quarterback in that spot, cover zero, press man coverage against your physical receiver, you throw the go ball. Like that's just how it works. And if that connects, like you said, we're all celebrating and like, oh my gosh, look at Josh. He's, you know, such a cannon. So it's hard. There's a piece of me that wonders if Dorsey could help protect Josh from himself a little bit more and know those tendencies and maybe shift it a little bit. But like you said, the crazy one we watched to Stephon Diggs, he was covered pretty well on that ball. It was just a ridiculous pass. The one that Shakir took down that ended up kind of being the nail in the coffin. Those are overly aggressive, unnecessarily aggressive throws in the moment. Last week, the crazy touchdown to John Brown, the deep shot to Stephon Diggs, those are big play. Hunter Josh is it. And I think to Ben's point, you two are both way too young to fully grasp this. But people throw out the Brett Favre term, and a lot of people remember the gunslinger doesn't really have it anymore Favre with the Jets and the Vikings at the end in the late era Packers. People don't remember, like, Brett Favre was also the 3-time consecutive MVP Super Bowl champion, and the reason he's a Hall of Famer is because he was also ridiculous and very similar to Josh's play style, where it was simply, oh my God, no other human can make that play kind of guy. So, I put out a tweet today that, on the 58-yard ridiculous throw to Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis was wide open on a 10-yard out on that play. And everyone has it in their mind that Josh taking the check down is pure addition and only additional conversions. And you got to remember, sometimes it's taking the 10-yard out when he could have gotten the 58-yard completion to Diggs. And, I think that some people only see it as pure added value, and that, no, it's a trade-off. And sometimes you're not going to get those kill shots.
Yeah. And, I want to just maybe think of something else. Watching the Giants and Vikings game after, that Bills game, and seeing Dable and what he's done with a quarterback that used to be, a low completion percentage guy, took the check downs, and he still kind of is that player. I think Dable really knows who Daniel Jones is, and you could tell by, his performance on Sunday. But just the amount of, effort he's put in to tell Daniel Jones, don't turn the ball over. We have a star, running back. He's taken a player that's been on the Bills for 3 years, who's dealt with injuries, and has turned him into probably maybe next year their number one receiver, if not, their go-to guy in the red zone. He's been catching touchdowns left and right. So it's just it's crazy to watch. You have seen Josh turn the ball over a lot this year, and it has been a problem. And he's still, I saw a stat today on Twitter that he's like still the biggest. He has the biggest like big throw percentage, or like the biggest highest big throw percentages in the league. So it's kind of like balances out, and there's not a lot of quarterbacks that are like that. And he's such like a crazy quarterback in that aspect. But just seeing Dable and how he's looked in New York with Daniel Jones, and how Hodgins has done, I think it's kind of, for Bills fans to watch that, is kind of like, well, why isn't Allen doing that still? And I know he turned the ball over a lot last year, and that's the kind of player he is. But to this extent, and in the red zone like he's done this year, I've just never seen it.
Yeah, I'm gonna build off your comment real quick about just about Dorsey and fans kind of just saying, you know, I wish we had Dable back, which is funny because if I remember correctly, a lot of Bills fans last year were saying they wanted Dorsey or Dable gone, and it just seems like
For
is
the
it
famous steakhouse bet between Drew Gear at Rockpile, the reason he had to buy me a multiple $100 dinner is because he was ready to fire Dable, and I'm like, you're an idiot. What is wrong with you? And I finally said, all right, put your money where your mouth is. And then he ended up losing the bet. He lost the bet again this year. I just won the bet this past week, so he's got to buy me another expensive dinner. But yeah, there were lots of people like that, and we always fondly remember the good times of what's there. And to AJ's point quickly before I go back to you, Ben, if you ask Dable if he'd rather have the multiplicity of Josh Allen's offense or Daniel Jones one read or run it where he has to run 17 times a game, he'd take this one too. Now, Daniel Jones played the best game of his career Sunday, so God bless him. I'm not taking anything away from that, but you know that Vikings defense contributed to that plenty too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the thing is like you keep seeing people say, oh, I want to get rid of Dorsey. I want to get rid of Dorsey. For one, I'll say this. Yes, he hasn't been perfect. He's been worse than Dable since last year. But again, he's a rookie offensive coordinator. He's still learning with Allen, right? And Allen's probably still learning. They're learning how to work together in this, and we've seen it almost every game. But when we were talking about going deep all the time or not just running the ball, like AJ was saying, how we just, just give it to Cook here and there, give it to Singletary here and there. Instead, we're just launching it downfield to Gabe Davis. I think you even saw it on the fumble where Allen got sacked and they picked it up and scored. Was his major read? I think it was just a little overthinking by Allen, because his first read should have been just dump off right to Singletary, right? It looked like. Yeah, it looked like he was wide open. You saw that, you knew the blitz was coming. You knew it was cover zero, and he still just kind of held on to it a little bit too long. But he's got to just take the easy play, and I think that's sometimes what Allen, like we said, he tries to do a lot for this offense. He tries to sometimes play the hero ball a little too much, but that's the player he is, right? He wants to win so bad. He wants to make those big time plays instead of just dumping it off. And I do think that is partly because him and Dorsey are still kind of putting it together there. They're still working together, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. And I think you'll see those plays, like you'll see 7 sacks in one game sometimes. You'll see a fumble when Allen normally wouldn't get sacked and fumble the ball. But I think it's just those little hiccups. And yeah, it's playoff time now. We got to clean those up. Teams got to clean those up. But I mean, it's an emotional game. You can tell these players are trying to play very hard for, I mean, not just DeMar, but themselves this whole playoff. So sometimes I think it's just a little too much overthinking or a little too much trying to, make the big play like we've seen. I mean, how many times he threw the ball deep that game or over 20 plus yards? I want to say it was
11.
Yeah,
I've seen
11.
One site has it at 13, one has it at 11. So it depends on how you measure it. It was still the most of any quarterback in any game this year.
Yeah, and I think Allen might have been the only one. Oh no, he didn't though. There was only one quarterback this whole weekend that threw over 40 passes and won. So part of it, yes, could be like AJ said. Just we have to run the ball here or there a little more. Maybe that's the key to letting Allen relax, right? Let him breathe a little bit instead of just thinking, oh, let's go deep, let's go deep, let's go deep. But even back to the first drive of the game, right? The first drive of the game was looking great for the first. We got 2 straight first downs, and it was not. They were quick plays. They were just get the ball to Diggs, get the ball to whoever. And I think sometimes, especially when things start to unravel, we forget to come back to those plays. We forget to just say, let's just get the ball in our playmakers' hands, get the ball to Diggs, because I mean, like people have said all year, it's like sometimes Diggs disappears, and yeah, that has a lot to do with the fact that they're giving him so much attention. But it's also, I think, we're just not. Just simplify it for 1 play, 2 plays, and then go back to doing what Allen does best and making those big time plays. So I think it's just a combination of, we're still trying to figure out, what they like to do best. And I think I'm blanking on which one of you said it, but they're trying to put the game away. Like AJ, I think it was AJ that said it. They just wanted to put the game away. It's the Dolphins. They're playing Skylar Thompson. they just want to go deep and take that kill shot, as people say, like that kill shot just to really put them down. And they didn't really go our way this time.
Yeah, before we're gonna do a little something fun here. We're gonna rank all of us. Are gonna rank the 8 quarterbacks that are left in the playoffs, which I think is gonna be fun. But before I get to that, I just think that I in my opinion, this is all my opinion. I think Dorsey's been fine. I've always been the one since the beginning of the year to kind of blame Allen more, just going to the games and seeing, the concepts. There's been a couple of times where, 2 receivers are in the same spot at once, and that's kind of concerning. Like he'll throw a ball, and this just comes to my memory. I think like Gabe Davis dropped it, and like Gabe Davis and Isaiah McKenzie were right next to each other. So there's been times where the Bills have really, struggled to space the field, but there's also just been so many times where there's been misexecution. Gabe Davis has had some drops. The Miami one in the end zone comes to mind. The Dawson Knox, clear secure. So there's a lot of things that the players haven't been doing right as well. And that's what it comes down to sometimes is the execution on the field. So
real quick, I'm not giving you a hard time, Ben, because I think almost everyone agrees. And then even if you ask me, in a serious moment, I'll agree. But when we throw out there that, of course, Dorsey hasn't been as good as Dable, I think that is the commonly accepted practice, except for, points scored in yards and DVOA and EPA and every other metric where he's actually a little bit better than Dable was last year in every metric. Yeah. And like, I think my eyes tell me that what you said matches up, but at some point you also have to look at it and be like, oh yeah, Dable was the OC for that Jaguars game and that Falcons game and that Colts game. And, we only remember perfect game, Josh, against the Patriots and the crazy shootout against the Chiefs and be like, oh yeah, Dable did have 5 or 6 ridiculous stinkers where there's a reason we lost 6 games last year and, had those things that people only remember that little pocket of, oh no, he always called a perfect game. Look what he's doing with Daniel Jones. Today, Ben Solak and Stephen Ruiz on the Ringer NFL show straight out said Dorsey was better in 2022 than Dable was in 2021, but because of what Dable has done with Daniel Jones in 2022, no one can remember that. We can only think that, well, look what he's doing with Daniel Jones. He must have been doing that last year with Josh. And everyone forgets that, well, actually, Dable's awesome year was 2020. He actually wasn't quite as good last year before he left. And it's just things like that is hard to always have in context.
Yeah, the turnovers this year, I think, just for this offense have just been so – I can't remember a season where the turnovers and, they've just been so costly for this team. And I feel like every time there is a turnover, it's either at the worst moment, the team gets points off of it. And I think, one of the, craziest things I read after, I forgot who said it. It might have been it was Marcel Jacques. He tweeted after he used to be a Bills reporter and he was great for the Bills. He tweeted something that like Skylar Thompson and these guys put up 31 points on the Bills. What are the Bengals and Chiefs going to do? But there's more context to that because there was a punt return that they got after that clear secure drop that set them up at the 30. The 2 picks got them in good field position. There
was a point in the game where the Dolphins had 178 combined return yards and 87 offensive yards. There was a point where they were winning the game in the second half with 112 total yards of offense. Like that, that is not sustainable. No other team can do that. It took every fluky instance for that to happen. So, but cool.
Yeah, before you jump in, AJ, I do want to say I do think a lot of it, just real quick with the Dable and Dorsey, I do think a lot of it was Dable towards the end of the year, like we saw last year. I mean, that run, like you said, was really unbelievable what that offense and Allen was doing. So I think, a lot of it was now you're seeing, okay, we're still kind of putting it together here. Where though that last stretch, even at the end of the regular season, I mean, that offense was rolling. It was really going. Allen looked phenomenal. Obviously, the playoffs, we had the perfect game. We had then, the Chiefs game. I mean, it was just an unbelievable run by Allen in that offense. So I think, that obviously Dorsey or Dable had some stinkers last year. But I think that's the thing that is getting most fans upset is that it's playoff time and we're not fully there, which I mean, it's tough to do that. It's tough to say, look back at last year and say, all right, like why are we not the same? So yeah,
well, and again, 34 points, 423 yards, 26 first downs. That's where our bar is of not good enough, is still a pretty freaking, it's still maybe the best offensive output of any team this past weekend. I didn't look, but it might have been.
Well, Niners dominated in the second half. But I don't know if that was all. I don't know if that was totally offense, but Purdy. I mean,
yeah. I just
beg your pardon. He's got the best offensive system, and his receivers create the most separation. But
ridiculous.
He's still doing. He's still doing his job.
Yes, the Niners did have more yards. They did. We had more first downs. They had more yards.
Okay. You want to do the quarterbacks thing? I'll start.
Yeah,
Greg, or actually, I'll go me, then Ben, then Greg can finish, and then
Are we going from 8 to 1? Are we going to go around? Or are we listing all 8?
I'll list all 8 and go 1 to 8.
Okay.
So I'll start. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes won until this season has just been spectacular for him. He's his completion percentage. He's broken his own completion record 4 times this season. I would turn on Red Zone would be on and be like, Patrick Mahomes has completed 17 passes in a row, breaks his old record from last week of 16. It's like he's just so good. Andy Reid's such a good offensive coach. They're so creative. So Pat Mahomes won. I'm gonna go Allen 2. I debated whether to go Burrow or Allen, but I'm gonna go Allen 2. Burrow just because I know his O-line wasn't that great last year, and he still took him to the Super Bowl and beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead, which the Bills didn't do. But I know his quarterback is not a winning stat, so I'll go Allen. I think he's a more talented quarterback. Obviously, had his struggles this year, but still, just an overall top talent in this league. Joe Burrow 3. He's just a winner. That's his motto. He just knows how to win. I mean that's what he does. I know that last week the whole game got flipped, upside down when Huntley fumbled at the end zone, and that could have been a whole different ball game. But it is what it is. Hurts, I'm going to go 4. I think Hurts obviously has just done a really good job. I mean, adding A.J. Brown, you see it. The third-year quarterbacks adding that number 1 weapon has just worked out for a lot of guys. Jalen Hurts looks phenomenal this year. 5, I'm going to go Dak. I think Dak really just performed well last week. He just did a really good job, or actually last night. 6, Trevor Lawrence. I think he is, after a terrible first half, he turned it around and figured it out. Still hasn't lost on Saturday. And then who are the last 2? Purdy 7. Who's the last team?
Daniel Jones.
Yeah. All right. I'll go Daniel Jones just based off. I don't know though. It's hard. I just can't. I'll put Purdy at 8 just because I haven't seen enough. I know he's done it really in a playoff game, but I want to see him play like a top 10-5 offense. In a big game. I know every playoff game is a big game, but I think the Cowboys this week.
I'm praying to God that the 49ers make the Super Bowl and that Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott get 2 weeks to prepare for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, you're right. I can totally see where you're coming from there. So I'll go Danny Jones 7 and Purdy 8.
All right. Am I next?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I mean,
do not go Allen 1, dude. Don't be a homer.
No, it's not. It's not. No, Mahomes is 1. Although I will say this, there are things I'm one that always says there's things Allen can do that Mahomes can't. There's things Mahomes can do that Allen can't. But I don't know in what category you can say that right now Allen puts him above Mahomes. So Mahomes, yes, 1. I mean, especially now seeing with what he can do without Tyreek Hill. I mean, if some people are saying he's even better this year, that's an argument you could make that he's even better without Tyreek Hill, which before the season people thought that he was going to fall off the face of the earth. He wasn't going to be the number 1 quarterback in the league anymore, and he proved that he still is. So I'm going to go him 1. Allen, I got to go 2. I think it's just the dual threat, what we saw last year, obviously in the playoffs. And I know Burrow made it farther last year, but to me, Allen looked significantly better than Burrow did last year. I mean, I could be mistaken, but I don't think they put up. I think they put up 20 points, more than 20 points once that whole run, maybe, or twice, maybe. I might be blanking, but he didn't. Yes, Burrow looked good, but he didn't look Allen level of playoffs last year. So I'm going to go Allen at 2. Burrow is 3. I mean, he is one of the most underrated quarterbacks, I think, in the league. I think some people have him way too low. But yeah, so he's number 3, and I think that's why this game this weekend between Allen and Burrow could be the game of the playoffs. I mean, depending on obviously what happens against KC, because I expect KC to beat Jacksonville in the AFC to go to the AFC Championship game. So I'll go Burrow 3. 4, it's tough just because it's only been 1 year of Hurts for me. And I mean, even looking back to that playoff game last year, his only playoff game, he threw 2 picks. Obviously they lost. So I'm going to put him at 4, but not by much. It's like just a hair above Dak. And I also do think, even though I think Dak's 5, I do think Dak could be challenged if he loses this week and you see Trevor Lawrence somehow pull out the win against KC. Then I think it's a very, very real conversation to say, is Trevor Lawrence in that 4 or 5 spot instead of Dak and Hurts? So I think those 3, it's very close between those 3, just because Lawrence and Hurts, we still obviously haven't seen it over a long period of time yet. And Dak just hasn't been able to really win in the playoffs consistently. So those 3, I think you can put in any order, but I'm going to go 4 Hurts, 5 Prescott, and 6 Trevor Lawrence, just like you, AJ. And yeah, I mean, 7 and 8 is pretty easy to me just because we haven't seen, I mean, Brock Purdy started, 7 games total so far in his career? So, I mean, I'm going to put him at 8, and I'm going to put Daniel Jones at 7. But if Brock Purdy pulls it off this week against that Dallas defense, could be a different story.
It's not terribly different from that Roethlisberger run his rookie year. Being able to go along just like being a caretaker with everybody else doing the actual hard work around him. There's 3 very easy tiers. So it's Daniel Jones and Brock Purdy in that bottom tier. Whatever order you have them doesn't really matter. I'd put Daniel Jones above him, and I'd put Purdy at 8. The next group I have together, because I won't lie, I don't think Jalen Hurts is terribly different than Brock Purdy. I think that he is shepherding an unbelievable offensive system surrounded by an amazing offensive line, multiple running backs, multiple tight ends, stud receivers, and adds a running element that those other guys don't. But if you ask me privately, do I think Daniel Jones could be doing what Jalen Hurts is doing with everybody else there in Philly and those coaches? Yeah, I think he probably could. So now he's doing it. He's executing that. So that's why he's in the tier above. And he's also done better than what people expected. But I think he's very much working within a system. And if you took, him out and put Jalen Hurts in, some other weird, so if you take Jalen Hurts and put him in Chicago, I think Chicago still has the number 1 pick. Just like Justin Fields had the number 1 pick. And he'd probably lead the league in rushing for quarterbacks, and they'd lose 14 games. So I have him at 6. I have Dak at 5, and I have Lawrence at 4. He tried to go full Peterman, which is always a scary moment. But you see the special plays and how they came back and how he was able to bring himself back there. And then the top 3 there's a healthy gap. And then the top 3. And like everybody else, I have it Burrow, Allen, and then Mahomes. If, the one area, I think it's perfectly reasonable for people to say, if you ask me, if you're starting a franchise from here forward, who would you take? I would take Josh Allen. I would take Josh Allen moving forward to build around and everything that he can do. But from what they've done to this point and what they've accomplished, Patrick Mahomes has the greatest first 5-year resume in any sport history, any sport in anything. Like his first 5 years are better than LeBron's first 5 years. He's better than Brady's first 5. Like his first 5 years are the greatest resume in sports history to do that. So it's impossible not to have him number 1. He's the MVP. He's the number 1 player in sports right now. And it's going to take a incredible effort to knock him off.
One more question before you go. If Burrow beats Allen this weekend, could you see a situation where you think Burrow could jump Allen in that ranking?
People would be able to make an intelligent argument as to why. There are always going to be things that Allen can do that Burrow is never going to be able to do. And in the same sense, if you switch those two players and simply kept the Bengals talent and roster and everyone that's there and Allen, and you took Burrow and put him on this Bills team, the Bengals are probably undefeated, and the Bills are probably 10-7, 11-6.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree on that one.
So Burrow is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. So if you give him two ridiculous talents to go out there and win their routes, that's going to be an awesome combination. Of course, that's going to work out well. If you ask him to go, if we're going to find out on Sunday, and we did find out, Sunday night, if the blocking breaks down and he all of a sudden has to figure it out, you get the game there where he didn't win that game. He was about to lose Tyler Huntley. Tyler Huntley was about to beat him, and his defensive lineman had to save him going back 98 yards. And even after that, he had 3 possessions to put the ball away, to put the game away, and went 3 and out 3 times and kept giving them chances. So, all the things that we complain about and are frustrated with and worried about, Josh was making choices we were frustrated with. Burrow just couldn't complete passes. So if he wins, sure. I can see the argument. It's not crazy, but I mean, how about this? Ask any Bengals fan, if the wind picks up a little bit on Sunday, which quarterback do they feel better about playing that game?
I mean,
yeah. You got a point. Greg, thank you for coming on. I know you got to head out. So where can everyone find you before you go? And
come on everywhere that you're checking this out. You can find all of our Cover One shows all over every podcast network, on YouTube, everywhere that you're watching good shows like this with Shoop and AJ. Make sure you guys are checking everything out. You can find me on Twitter at Greg Thompson. Search at Cover One on YouTube, and looking forward to hopefully continuing on this Bill season.
Yes.
Sounds good, Greg. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. Do you want to dive into this Bengals game a little bit or what?
Yeah, and we actually did get a question from Twitter.
Okay.
That if we want to go over that first, because it is about the game, it is about the Bengals coming here over to Orchard Park.
Okay.
So if we want to jump into that, we can jump right into that. But
sure, my phone's dead, so you got to just read me the question so I can't see.
I got it. But yeah, no, I mean, great conversation there though with Greg.
Yeah.
I mean,
Greg, really appreciate it.
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. I said, yeah, he knows what he's talking about.
But all right. So it's from Jeff Mets fan 125. He asked, will our defense hold up? We need to pressure Joe Burrow. Their offensive line is their weakest link. And I do want to build off of this before we get into it, before you answer the question. Obviously, it's looking right now like 3 offensive linemen for them are going to be out for the game. That's huge, especially considering you look at last year. Burrow wasn't the best. People say he doesn't have the best pocket presence. I tend to kind of agree a little bit that he doesn't have the best pocket presence. And I also saw a stat today that we were 4th in pressure rate with Von Miller. Without him, we are 27th in the league in pressure rate. So obviously there's been injuries on both sides. What do you think of the matchup between the offensive line, the Bengals offensive line, Bills defensive line? Obviously we've been struggling to get that consistent pressure without Von. Bengals have kind of been struggling to keep the pressure off Burrow. Even we saw it last week. So what do you think about that matchup? Who do you think has the edge?
Well, it's tough because I think the Bills are going to blitz a little bit on Sunday. That we saw it, last week against the Dolphins. The Bills really utilized the blitz and send some extra, players in. Milano Edmonds is a really good blitzer. They're both just they're a top 3 linebacker doing this league. But you look at, and I saw this stat, and I was going to bring it up before you said it about the Von Miller. Andrew Russell on Twitter tweeted it out 5 hours ago. And I'm still, even with 3 defensive or offensive linemen out for the Bengals, the way the Bills are going to win this game and the way they move on to the AFC Championship is making Burrow uncomfortable and not letting Chase, Higgins, Mixon, Hayden Hurst he really loves. I'm a big fan of Hayden Hurst. I think Burrow's, loves his tight ends, and Hayden Hurst has played really well. So the way to beat them is to get pressure to the quarterback. And they're down 3 linemen. this is going to be a big game for the D-line that has struggled since we lost Von, and it shows how big Von has been to this team, before he got, the ACL injury. So for the Bills to win this game, it's going to come down to, and we can go into this further on, Friday when we do our preview show. But the fact that they're down 3 linemen, the Bills have Boogie Basham, second year unproven, Aye-Aye-Ajay, who's still trying to prove something after being drafted in the second round, Greg Rousseau, who's had a good season, but he's a little inconsistent. I know he had a sack. He crushed Matt Jones 2 weeks ago at home, but he hasn't been, consistently getting home like the player we wanted him to be. I think he has a lot of more development to do, and I think eventually he can be that player for the Bills, but not right now. And then Ed Oliver, who I think is really good, but he's banged up. He's got injuries all over his body. He's a workhorse in there. And then I think getting Jordan Phillips back in this game would be huge. But a guy that I think really needs to step up if they want to win this game is either Boogie Basham or Aye-Aye-Ajay. And I think they have to win their battles and have to make Joe Burrow uncomfortable. You know what you got in Groot. You know what you got in Epinesa. Daquan Jones is good at stopping the run. So you got 3 guys there that what they have, and what they brought this year has been good enough when you have Von. But there hasn't been that replacement for Von yet. And with 3 offensive linemen now for the Bengals, they have to get to Burrow. And it is concerning because the Bills have struggled with that since losing Von. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm very confident that with 3 linemen hurt for the Bengals, they're going to, absolutely make Joe Burrow uncomfortable and not let him get a lot of passes off and have 10-plus hits on him and stuff. But I'm also not going to sit here and say the Bills should be confident going into this game as a defensive line unit to, look, we need to get home. We need to get to Burrow if we want to win this game and move on, and that's going to be the key. And that's what the Bills missed last year against the Chiefs. Mahomes ran all over the Bills. So this year, you're in the same situation. You got your chance to do it against a banged-up O-line, an O-line that was healthy through the first 16 weeks. So it really comes down to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think the one guy that you said was Epinesa, and that's a guy that I've always said he's better than he looks right now. Because the major thing for him is he's been getting some pressure this year, but the major thing is he hasn't been able to finish the plays. I think he's been around like a 65% missed tackle rate. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, that's the major thing for him is he just has to be able to wrap up and take him down. And with Joe Burrow, who I personally think doesn't have the best pocket presence in the league. I mean, it's really not that great once the pocket starts collapsing on him. You saw it against the Ravens. You've seen it before they signed those offensive linemen this past year. And then what happened early in the year? Everybody was like, oh, well, you just revamped this whole line. How is Burrow still getting sacked so many times? It's because if you can collapse that pocket, he will get uncomfortable. And that's the thing. You don't necessarily have to get to him every time, but just collapse it. Make him feel like he's being suffocated by his own offensive lineman. And I think that's where you're going to see Ed. Hopefully, I haven't seen the injury report this week, but Jordan Phillips, I would love to see back this week, but I know he's had that lingering injury that he just can't get rid of. So I'd love to see him step up and maybe get some pressure. I mean, like Boogie and Epinesa too, if they can just collapse it on him. Don't not necessarily have to get to him, collapse it on him. And I think another thing that needs to happen when it comes to getting pressure, and it's going to be keys, because Burrow's going to try to get the ball out fast, right? That they're going to try to game plan to say, get the ball into these playmakers' hands, see what they can do. Yes, get your hands up, but also we saw it last week with Kaiir Elam. He had probably the best game of his career last week. 0 passer rating.
Yeah.
And he had a pick. I mean,
1 targeted, 0 passer rating, 1 targeted. Crazy.
He was keeping up with Tyreek. I mean, he had a really great game last week. I think if you can have those two trades, you kind of see getting a little bit back into form. He's starting to really come around now. If you can have them get maybe a coverage sack or two to really get Burrow rattled, to say, oh, well, my guys aren't getting open. Now they're collapsing the pocket. Boom, what are you going to do? Then you don't have to blitz as much either, because now you're basically just saying, Burrow, come beat us. We'll challenge you. We have an all-pro safety. We have an all-pro linebacker, one of the best linebacker duos in the league. We have a young rookie corner that's doing great. We had a Trey Day who's slowly coming back. So once he would see that, I think he'd get a little bit, maybe not in his head, because obviously Burrow's a winner. He, like you said, he knows how to handle the pressure. But he doesn't know how to handle the pressure if his own offensive line is caving in on him. So I think it's more so just getting the push rather than getting the pressure, if that makes sense. Getting the push, not making sure that we're overextending so Burrow can get out of the pocket and then find his guys open, because we all know Jamar Chase and him have that chemistry. T. Higgins has great chemistry. Tyler Boyd, I mean, they got great chemistry there, and they know how to get open. So I think it's more just get a push, get a good push on them, show them we're going to be coming all day. Maybe bring Tremaine too, because get the length in there. Bring Tremaine on a blitz here and there, get some length. But I think it's going to come down to getting a push.
Absolutely. So before we go here, I'm going to give my final thought, and then Ben, if you have anything to say, you can give yours as well. So we are going to do a preview show this week on Friday. We'll bring a Bengals fan in. We're going to discuss this game, really go in depth about this game. But my final thought before we get there is just the Bills are in the same spot that they were last year in the divisional round. Now, I'm not saying that we're playing the same team or they're not playing the same kind of quarterback that Mahomes is. Burrow's more of I'm going to read the field. I know what coverage you're doing. I'm going to change the play at the line. And he may not be more talented. And this is the thing about like the comparisons with quarterbacks that's so hard for me is Tom Brady is probably one of the most least athletic quarterbacks ever. But that dude just is so smart of how he plays the game of football. And there's no one smarter at the position. So like, yes, talent's important, but you look at Allen and his choices. If Allen with his talent had Tom Brady's like feel, whatever you want to call it, field awareness or the ability to make the right decision more.
IQ.
Yeah, IQ kind of thing. Football IQ. I mean, obviously Allen's been in this league for 5 years. He understands defenses and is more comfortable. But it's just like how important is talent and then how important is IQ. I beg to differ that a lot of quarterbacks that have won the Super Bowl have been pretty, smart guys and not just overly talented. You look at Justin Herbert, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. He's not in the playoffs. Now, that has a lot to do with his coaching staff, and I think they really limit him. But that's besides the point. I got on a tangent there. But my original final thought was the Bills are in the same spot, except this year they don't have Micah Hyde, but they have Trey White. So you're going into a game where no Von Miller last year, no Von Miller this year, okay? 3 alignment hurt. You have the ability for the young guys to show up that they drafted, and you're still missing one of your key pieces in the secondary. So a year later, they have Trey. They have a stud in Trey who's coming back to form, Kaiir Elam, the rookie, and then Poyer, who's playing with probably a broken elbow or something's wrong with his elbow and something's wrong with his knee. It's reported that he tore his meniscus. So you got a banged up Poyer and a Trey White that's just like rounding back the farm, and a rookie in Kaiir Elam, and then Dean Marlowe, who's just got on the field because Hamlin went down. So how important? This is the most important game to date in terms of the pass rush. What McDermott and Frazier dropped to get to Burrow to disrupt him, because you're right, his pocket presence isn't great. Although he can scramble and get out of the pocket sometimes. He found a first down against Baltimore. He's not great at it. So that's the key. They're in the same position as last year. The D line and getting to that quarterback will be the most important thing with the secondary that's just not the same or not as good as it would be if we had everyone healthy.
Yeah. I mean, I think you nailed it. I mean, this has been honestly, it's probably one of the most nervous I've seen the fan base in a while, right? And even last year going into KC, I didn't see the Bills fan base, Bills Mafia, as nervous as they are going into this week. Obviously, there's a lot of injuries. There's different things that Allen's turning the ball over more and people are getting nervous, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's going to come down to, at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to essentially if who wins the turnover battle, right? Who wins that battle will come out on top. Also, who can run the ball the best? Those two things. It's going to be the sneaky things that what's going to happen here. Are the Bills going to try to run Allen more to kind of get the game flowing, get Allen rolling, get him more comfortable instead of just we'll drop back every time with you. Let's drop back. So I think it's going to be interesting to see also what the offense does, because the Bengals defense during that playoff run last year was unbelievable, right? They were unbelievable. They played in a decent game, I think, against Baltimore. I think they got a little bit lucky on that QB jump over the
Bill-
top.
the Bills got lucky as well. Jalen Waddle drop. I mean, there were plays out there, man, that could have changed that game too. It's such a week to week league. It's so hard. You know what I mean? Like it's so hard. Any given day, man, the ball bounces the right way. Like that's the only reason the Dolphins were even in that game in the first place was Beasley drops, goes right to him. You know, it's such a hard game to play perfect every week.
Yeah. I mean, we did have a comment, not really about the Bills. If you want me to pull it up at all, I don't. It's kind of it's a Bengals rivalry question. Anything to say about the Browns? I mean, I guess good luck this offseason.
You overpaid for a quarterback that's probably never gonna pan out, in my opinion. I think they overpaid for Deshaun Watson. I think they were better with Brissett this season. Their offense was statistically better. So
yeah, that's all I got to say. And I guess we'll try to beat Cincy for you. I hope we beat Cincy for you since they're in your division. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't got much to say about the Browns, but this game this weekend, huge game, could potentially be the game of the year. Obviously, Kansas City, a game against Kansas City, either way, versus for the Bengals or Bills against them, that could also be the game of the year. But I think it's definitely gonna be the game of the weekend, in my opinion. I don't think it's gonna be a game
besides Daboll, because I want to see how the Giants do against the Eagles, and I think they can realistically pull that game off. I mean, I think they're definitely going to cover. I don't know about win, but I think that's the other game. I just think Dak's going to fold against the Niners defense. I don't see an outcome where the Cowboys can win that game unless Pollard and Zeke just like carry them to a victory. I think Dak's going to struggle, but the Bills and Bengals definitely the top of the list. But that Giants Eagles game is going to be fun.
Yeah, and then that Jags Chiefs. I think only reason I might say that the Jags have a chance because it's played on Saturday and. For some reason, Trevor Lawrence can't lose on a Saturday.
They can't. Hey, they can't go down 27-0 to Andy Reid though.
No. I mean, Chiefs can go down 27-0, but
yeah, Chiefs can go down 27-0 at half, and I'd still be like, I don't know if this is over, but Jags, if they do, that game's over.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, we'll look out for our Twitter. We'll have a preview show on Friday. Our Twitter will have the updates. We are having a Bengals fan, Vance Meek. He's a great guy. He really knows the sport, really knows football, knows the Bengals, and he's excited for this game. But yeah, I mean, big game this weekend. We'll see you guys Friday. AJ, any last words?
Before we go, that story that came about that Chiefs fan. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, the what's his name? The guy with the mask, right?
Yeah, yeah, the mask. Yeah. We messaged him to come on our show.
I know. Did he ever respond?
No, but thank God he did it because it kind of in hindsight maybe, but geez, man, I saw that and I'm like, I follow this guy. I go on our podcast Twitter and I see a DM, and I want to come on the show, and this guy's robbing banks for money to go to the games. It's crazy.
It would have been a great story if he was on the show, and then now we find out that happened. So, but hey, I mean, not gonna. I don't know. That's all I gotta say. Yeah. Any last words though before we head off?
No, that's it. Just come to the preview show Friday. We're gonna really advertise it. Probably try and get as many people in here as possible. So
yeah. And as always, go Bills.